Hey, Mike here. Now, we are trying to build a brand at the Bin Day Brewing, trying to do something that we don't think the brew industry has particularly done before. But the key to that is the brand bit, right? So I'm very, very, very pleased to say we're here with super mega branding expert Murray Stevens to talk through what is a brand, what does it take to build it, and effectively, how do we make Bin Day Brewing famous? Branding, seriously. I've heard it described very famously by Jeff Bezos as the thing that people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, very much so. I think there's been a really interesting development in brand over the years, and I think for a long time branding was so much seen as the logo. I think when you talk to your mum about it and say, what is a brand? She'll always tell you it's the Nike swoosh if your mum happens to be that sort of trendy mum. But it's not anymore. The brand is exactly that. What is a brand? Well, the brand is what the word on the street is. It's how people see and perceive your kind of company and what you stand for, how you act. It's not just something you see on a piece of paper. It's actually every point of contact with your kind of company itself. That is in effect the brand.
So so that's really important because people normally do think about a brand being a logo. And of course, a huge amount of time and money goes into people making logos, right? You hear about these big companies that have spent millions on creating a brand that's some swirly-whirly thing. Yes. So I'm not saying that a logo is not important, right? But it's basically the life and soul of your company, right?
It is. To me, it's like the logo is kind of like the hive that all the bees come to, right? It's the thing that everything kind of surrounds. It's something that you can base it around. But actually, the interaction of all of your consumers with that is far more important. In your case, your branding will end up being the flag that's the standard bearer that everything kind of comes towards. But actually, all their points of interaction with yourselves, with your product, with the people that kind of sell it represented, that is going to be as important, if not more important, than the actual logo itself.
Okay, so we want to build this brand.
Yes.
We want to make it a famous brand.
Yep.
Tell me how to do that.
Well, I find it's really interesting, I think, the way that you're kind of setting up your company and where the challenge is. You look at the point of view of kind of running it through social, and that is a really interesting challenge. The power of the brand nowadays sits with the consumer. Many years ago, the power of the brand used to sit with kind of traditional points of media. So it was very much typical TV advertising, it used to be the press. And so the power really sat with the company themselves. They chose when to interact with the consumer. Now, it's actually flipped and reversed it completely. The power's in the hands of the consumer itself. With the kind of always on digital kind of content, you're seeing that people choose when they interact with the brand. And social is the absolute ultimate kind of way of looking at that. So you're looking at people who are choosing, they are kind of choosing their environment, who they look for, who do they search, who do they kind of follow, all those points of contacts coming into you. So really, I think the smart way, and the thing that really I find fascinating what you're doing is you're putting the power in the hand of the consumer. It's up to them on how they're going to interact. In some ways, letting them formulate who you are as a brand themselves. I think that hook in itself is the thing that I would be just exploring and playing fun with, really using it as a bit of an opportunity to kind of go, what do you want us to be?
And those touch points you say then, so we do a lot of stuff on Twitter and Instagram, and we're trying to work out what to do in Facebook and in LinkedIn and all those things, because there's a subtly different audiences that want stuff in subtly different ways.
Yeah.
You think we're getting it right at the moment with literally films on YouTube, engaging as much as we can on our other social channels?
I think you're at the right start point. The interesting challenge, I think, is going to be as...
Is that just a way of saying you goddamn amateurs?
No, not at all. I think the interesting thing is you're looking now at kind of how content is getting more and more targeted by people. You've got the ability to kind of use data to lead creative, which has always been a very alien kind of concept to anyone who's more kind of schooled in the kind of beautiful art of creative. If you're looking at it now, you're thinking, well, actually, if I know the profile, it's almost like the pain points. It's this idea, if I can kind of say, I'm trying to sell Mike this beautiful Binde Brewery beer, and how do I sell it to him? With beautiful advertising, sexy model, wonderful backdrop. That's how I'm going to try and encourage you to buy into. Well, actually, if I know that on a Tuesday and it's raining and it's after 5 o'clock, Mike loves a beer, I don't really need to spend loads of money on an idea. Actually, I just need to make sure at that time I'm saying to Mike, fancy a beer? And you're more likely to go, yeah, I do. And so it's kind of understanding how you can use those data points. So I think at the moment you're kind of really, you're at the start of creating your brand, which is really exciting. But as you move on and it kind of expand your consumer group, you might kind of find that actually those kind of data points and kind of getting into it could be the way that you can expand that kind of touch point.
So by data points, we're talking about, quite simply, really understanding our audiences.
It's really understanding your audience, but you can drill it down more than that. I mean, you can profile everybody into kind of different user groups, certainly, but it can become as simple as triggers of kind of weather, the location, the age person. You get all these kind of profile triggers, and that can really help you direct your kind of target your creative to the right people.
But you say simple. I don't think people realise that companies do this. They will actually target you based on the weather in the place that you live, right?
Yeah. We, the company I work for is a kind of creative production agency, and actually what we're seeing is that creative used to be the big idea, and now it's been broken down into manageable chunks because actually everybody fits into a profile. So really you're looking at a creative idea and cutting it down into chunks, and I'm kind of adding kind of almost like jigsaw pieces together, working out what your profile is and saying, well, your hot weather, your age over 30, your location is an office location, and all our creative fits into that scope. So we'll really will target everybody in that way to make sure that we kind of send the most appealing message at the right point.
Because there's an interesting point there, right? Because you are effectively slicing and dicing people, but at the same time, one of the big drivers of marketing at the moment is like sort of transparency and authenticity, right?
Yes.
So we don't want to get lost we don't want our story, the story of Robbie and Mike and building the brewery, to get lost in a mathematical equation. So how do we balance, giving people stuff they'll actually want without making it too scientific and too almost cold?
I think if you're looking at and I presume this is kind of the target market, you understand your main followers.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're seeing in that kind of, what I would presume is that kind of West Gen Z kind of following is social conscious. Right. People nowadays are generally buying into a brand for more than just a product. So what do you stand for? What do you actually I know you're talking to other experts that may or may not be my wife on the environment, right? Yeah. And you look at those kind of points, you've got to stand for something. You've got to have something behind you. So the people have got to believe in you. It can't be a gimmick. Right. You have to actually kind of have a point. And I think that everything that I've seen so far, you've got genuine belief behind what you're doing. It's not just an experiment. You believe in your product, you believe in what you're doing, you really do relate to the consumers you're reaching out to. And that's going to give you that huge advantage with all these people who say, I buy into you, I buy into your product, I buy into what you're trying to achieve. And that really does kind of win your consumer over. So I think that's a huge correct step in where you're kind of going. I look forward to seeing how as you expand into a huge multi-million industry, keeping that kind of idea going.
But then, so the idea being then, quite simply, is we have a sort of vision for what we want to be, which is quite simply, a company that adds to the sum total of happiness in the world, right? And beer is our first way of doing that.
Lovely.
As a company, as an ethos, we're trying to do that. And as long as we stick to that, you're saying that we can then aim to serve the consumer through these incredibly complex data algorithms. As long as we do it with all that in mind, then everything will be all right.
I think you're doing it the right way. Start with having, as you say, kind of making people happy through that kind of different area. That's a great way. Stay true to that. Don't forget that. Keep that at the heart of what you do. That will really serve your core consumer very well up front. The creative that you generate that kind of helps portray that product is certainly important, but actually portraying that and keeping to that kind of ethos is massively, massively key. All successful brands, whatever kind of size they are, whether it's your mega Nike or your smaller ones, they started off with the real true essence of what they were there to represent. And so when they lose that, it's often when they kind of see they lose the consumers that sit behind it. So I think you've got that right. As you undoubtedly grow into a mega brewery taking over the world in a happy, smiley way, then you can start to look at how you can target.
Not in a sort of scary, terrifying, smiley way.
No. Some of the nicest little kind of happy, smiley way. I think.
Let's wrap it up then and say, if we take away one lesson from this in terms of taking the sort of nascent brand that we have that so far seems to be doing all right, and growing it, what would your one lesson to us be?
One lesson.
One piece of advice.
I think the one piece of advice I feel is that you have come into this with a very true essence of who you are and who you want the brand to be. Don't ever lose sight of that. Keep that at the heart of who you are, what you sell and what you make. And then I think you'll find that your consumers will buy into that and believe in that. And I think you'll find that takes you a very, very long way.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure.
And that's it. So there we go. That's where we buy a brand. Robbie and I are off to stay true to who we are. And I promise you that the fame and the money will not change us.